Good morning. Today we will continue with the terrorism part, especially in Jammu and Kashmir. It is one of the continuations of what we have on part of terrorism with external state actor and non-state actor. Okay, so when you recall that particular chapter, we can have a continuation into India, especially the cross-border terrorism. Right. So cross-border terrorism means terrorism which is rooted across the border and it is sponsored crossing the border. So that's a basic idea what we have on part of cross-border terrorism. Fine. So as far as questions, two questions are directly linked to this. One is Jamaat-e-Islami in Jammu and Kashmir brought into focus the role over ground workers. So how they enter into terrorist, assisting terrorist organization. Examine the role played by overground workers in assisting terror organization in insurgency affected areas and discuss measures to neutralize the overground workers. So this is one important question which is there in this particular case. Another one is multi-religious, multi-ethnic society, how radicalization has affected. So that can also be linked to this particular area. Okay. So you'll find answers in the discussion. So fine. As a recap, what we have done a couple of class before, terrorism by external state actors, because it is linked to the discussion now, I thought of just having a recap on it. So we have two types of terrorism which is found in the internet. One is external state sponsored or state actors. Another one is non-state actors. So state actors means we understood that it is government which is directly or indirectly indulging in terrorist activity, and they try to provide some support ideologically, financially, militarily, institutional, safe havens, intelligence and training part to the cadres of the terrorist groups. And naturally, this will lead to the external state having foreign policy with the instrument of terror, right? And we also understood what deep state is and how deep state involves influencers nurturing the radical groups as strategic assets. And naturally, these assets at times they go out of control and they can even bleed the country which nourished it. So, example, Pakistan has its own terror itself. So, Pakistan also faces terror, though it tries to channelize terror across the other countries. It is also infected by terror, no doubt about it. And we also saw about non-state actors who consist of individuals or groups which are not basically associated with the government directly, but indirectly we don't know how far it is linked. So we can't just neglect that. And they employ some proxy elements where they organize themselves in various forms like cartels, liberation movements, religious movements, ideological organizations. They have their own self-defense militia, organized crimes, and established networks. And their modus operandi, you know. So all these we have seen how the organized terror is going to happen or through organized crime and so on. So these are some of the basics what we have seen already, and we try to jump into cross-border terrorism in India. So generally in Jammu and Kashmir, terrorism is largely felt because of various reasons which are specific to Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, specific to Jammu and Kashmir. Say for example, in Jammu and Kashmir, you can see so these are some of the causes that are specific to Jammu and Kashmir because the most important route why Jammu and Kashmir suffers from terrorism is the decline of Kashmiriyat and Sufi traditions. This is one of the significant causes which we have identified in the recent times or in the past, how the cultural influence is very important to de-radicalize people. So Kashmiriyat is nothing but inclusive social movement, a cultural movement which identifies which provides identity of Kashmiri. Okay, so it includes all. it doesn't mean that Kashmiri means only the Muslim Kashmiri. It includes Pandits, it includes all forms of people who form the identity of Jammu and Kashmir, right? So Kashmirite traditions. Another important thing is the Sufi traditions which was there. You know that in Jammu and Kashmir, um, the Aurangzeb of Jammu and Kashmir, we call it as the rule of Sikandar Shah. So after Sikandar Shah, Zainul Abidin rule came in. Okay, so from that time onwards, Jammu and Kashmir had been mixedly ruled with some what do you call the um, Muslim rulers and later by Hindu rulers and so on. So this Kashmirite and Sufi traditions were largely focusing on um, the unity of these communities, cultures, and so on. They had an inclusive community as such. There are many such um, um, Sufi saints and Kashmirites also. Say, for example, Lal Date, one of the greatest Sufi poetess, she contributed a lot in Kashmir. Habba Khartoum. So there are many such social contributors. But unfortunately, when independence happened in after 1990s, these Kashmirite and Sufi traditions were strongly attacked by the separatists and the radicalists, and naturally, we ended up with a strong decline of these traditions, increasing the radicalization. So this one important thing which resulted in alienation of people at large, right? So this is one. Another thing is that we had political confrontation. Political confrontation means uh, this is one important um form. These terrorist organizations, they want to have political control over India, so naturally they politically confront. And this confrontation was through triggering confrontation between Kashmiri people and the government of India or the government of the Kashmir. So that's how the political confrontations happen, and that we will see how it happens. And naturally, when political confrontations happen, when there are some disruptions in the government functioning of the government, naturally it will have a strong impact on economic decline. So economy will decline, tourism declines, many other things decline. So economic decline will result in high unemployment, poverty, and so on. So naturally, they will have the social turbulence. And militarization because of AFSPA and the cross-border terrorism and so on. So over militarization resulted in confrontation between the armed forces and the civilians. And many a time civilian had died because of the instances of not only militancy but also by the military. Okay, so in that way there were much of a problem. We had constitutional disentment that triggered because of certain tinkering of the constitution of Jammu and Kashmir, and lately the abolition of the Article 370, then stereotyping of Kashmiris, pundits, and so on. And there were no less than external supporters or sponsors of terror like Pakistan, right? So in these set, ultimately we largely have this particular idea of larger political cause, which we had as a part of contribution of terrorism to Pakistan. Jammu and Kashmir. So in that way, the Pakistani terror and Jammu and Kashmir terror, everything involved in nexus of various ideologies, various political groups with political ambitions, and so on in India. So you need to understand that there existed three forms of terror in Jammu and Kashmir. So three forms in the sense: one, Pakistan centered; the other one, separatist centered. That is, they want to create an independent Jammu and Kashmir, neither with the support of India or Pakistan. Okay, so that is one. The other one, the local, who opposed both Pakistan and separatists. They wanted to secure that particular what do you call, identity of Pakistan and so. So in all these sense, it happened in this way. So this particular thing came down, but even when it is rising, this was linked to Pakistan always, the later stages, and this has done away with. The separatist tendency has came down. That is independent Kashmir, right? So in this way, it's a trilateral or tri-corner or tripartite problem. So the nexus was there, and we will see the nexus, how it happened, what are the problems we had in the subsequent discussion. So who are the party to these Jammu and Kashmir terrorists? There are two parties. One is the foreign elements, another one is the local militants. The foreign elements are the terror outfits. Okay, mostly they will be supplied by Pakistanis or Afghan Talibans or Pakistani terror organizations who are successful against their enemies. So these terror outfits like Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Harkatul Ansar or Harkatul Mujahideen. So likewise, there are many such organizations which target India, right? Apart from that, we have local militants. Local militants are bred from the local Kashmiri youth who are recruited by the military groups which operate in Jammu and Kashmir, like Hizbul Mujahideen. It is the most successful and still existing organization in Jammu and Kashmir. Then we had Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Force, Al-Bar, Al-Jihad, Muslim Janbaz Force. All these are the minor organizations which operate in Jammu and Kashmir with the local agenda and the local militants, right? So these are the two components, how it operates. But largely speaking, these local militants later, 1990, late 1990s, they started having the touch with foreign elements. Okay, so it always had that particular foreign elements or foreign kind of. Okay, so that is how they started having this particular case. But as far as categories of militancy is concerned, we had both state-sponsored terrorism and interland terrorism, which is represented here. So this is state-sponsored, and this is interland. But this interland also have some indirect support from these guys. Okay, and as far as separatism is concerned, um, the interland separatism which we had Gilani group. Okay, the Hurriyat Conference. So the best example is Hurriyat Conference. The Hurriyat Conference is nothing but the group or alliance of all separatists. And we had communalism, we had right-wing extremism. So all these put together, we had this issue. So it's a mix of, say, we see as an outsider, we see Jammu and Kashmir terror as a single problem, right? But within that particular terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, there are differences which happens when it is state-sponsored, when it is separatist, when it is communal, when it is right-wing, etc. Okay, so there are different nature in which it is having and the roots it is having in this particular case. So we will see them all in various phases. So there are different phases in which we can see the growth of militancy in Jammu and Kashmir. So you can see that the map of Jammu and Kashmir, which is showcasing the realistic condition in Jammu and Kashmir, which has the Indian side of Jammu and Kashmir, and the parts of Jammu and Kashmir of India, which is occupied by Pakistan. So you can see the greener areas. Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir in northern areas, and Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir in the Kashmir Valley, right? So in this particular case, and we have Indian side of Kashmir, Jammu, and Ladakh. Then China occupied territory, that is Akshay Chin and the Shashgam Valley. So all these give different shapes, different perspectives, different agenda, dominion of growth of militancy. So in this case, you can always, we can see that 1990 is a cutoff, okay? And apart, next one is 2002 after, that's another cutoff, okay? So there are two different cutoffs what we have. So pre-1990, the conflicts were there, and 1990 to 2002, we had some conflicts. Then from 2002 to 8, we had one, and 2008 to 19, and after 19, that is post 19, what we have recently, that is post 19. Okay, so this is what we have, various aspects what we have on part of the growth of militancy. So when we talk about pre-90 conflicts, so you can see it is rise of liberation movements, because it was 1948 to 1990. So it was more to liberate movements towards independent Kashmir or Kashmir with the Pakistan. It was more an informal war, what we had, right? And we'll see one by one, so how it happens. Clear? So what happened in 1990? So actually in 1990, in 1947 to 48, it was called an informal war, which was fought by Pakistan against India. The Pakistani troopmen in the garb of tribes, they invaded into Srinagar, up to Srinagar, and they were defeated and they were put back, and LOC, that is line of control, came into existence. So all these part you know. So this is the first ever instinct where the Pakistan wanted to claim a part of Jammu and Kashmir to them. And then in 1960s, the early 1960s, we had certain um, early 1960 to mid of 1960s, we had a master cell program. Okay, so what is this master cell program? Master cell program means Pakistan wanted to create mass rebellion. Okay, so they wanted to invoke mass rebellion as one of the important source of um, power struggle against the government of India, right? And in the second half of 1960s and the early half of 1970, that is 1971, Pakistan was almost realizing, because in this time we had the second Pak War 1965, right? We had 1971 liberation of Bangladesh and so on. So ultimately, it was clear that Pakistan cannot win a direct war against India. So Pakistan started failing against Indian aspect in militarily. That had a very great impact on Jammu and Kashmir also, because the local population, which was very much clear about it, they started rising up, like many other organizations came in, like Al Fatah, right? National Liberation Front. That is how Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front and all later came. So National Liberation Front came in. So all these, they started to act as a non-state actor. They started talking about independence of Jammu and Kashmir. In this time period, what happened? These non-state actors involved in a greater power struggle, in which in 1989, 1990, there was a massive violent attack of Kashmiris on Pandits. Okay, so that resulted in a massive exodus of Kashmiri Pandits outside, moving outside Jammu and Kashmir, and they settled in various other parts of Jammu and Kashmir. Right. So initially it was Pakistan trigger which happened, but through direct war they understood it is not going to happen. So the localites, they started having less faith on Jammu. Pakistan. They started their own struggle. So they converted this particular Jammu and Kashmir into a largely a Muslim-dominated state. Okay, by chucking out Pandits in a larger way. So the Pandit, Kashmiri Pandit exodus happened, right? So why 1987 was a turning point in Jammu and Kashmir? 1987 we had an election. Okay, so the general elections in Jammu and Kashmir. But in this general elections in 1987, the state elections, there were many participants in the election, especially Jamaat Islami, okay, and other Muslim organizations. They fought as Muslim United Front. Okay, many other organizations joined hands together, and they formed Muslim United Front, and they contested election. Okay, and the opposite party, the main parties were Congress, National Conference. So these two were in alliance, and they were contesting in various other larger perspectives. What happened? Elections were conducted, and there were around 44 candidates who were contesting with this particular guys, out of which only 14 could pass through, and many other candidates were defeated. And it was largely perceived in 1987 that the entire population of Jammu and Kashmir, they understood and they had a very strong belief that that election was rigged election. The elections were rigged in favor of Congress and National Conference. So there were many such population which believed it strongly. They believed it. Possibly it is also largely spoken that the elections were really rigged. So what happened? Those people, first instance, they had a dissolution with Pakistan. So they took up a political measure where they thought politically they could secure independence or at least power. But unfortunately, the elections were rigged. So those people who contested in Muslim United Front, especially there was a guy called Muhammad Yusuf Khan or Muhammad Yusuf Shah. So this guy, he renamed himself as Sayyid Salahuddin. And he started a movement called Hizbul Mujahideen. Okay, Mujahideen means freedom fighter. So Hizbul Mujahideen. So this Hizbul Mujahideen leader, Sayyid Salahuddin, sown the seeds of local terror. Okay, this is the first ever local terrorist organization which gave a new wave. So 1987 unleashed a new wave of terror. Okay. So the terrorism which happened before 1990 was gone. And the new form of terrorism came up in 1987. And in 1990 to 2002, that was a very high peak of terror in India. Okay. So because we had many such organizations which came up, especially the ethnic nationalist centered groups, they started coming up. So when Hizbul Mujahideen was getting popular, Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front, another organization, came up. Okay, so this is a separatist organization. They wanted to have independent Jammu and Kashmir, independent of both India and Pakistan, right? So Pakistan was not happy with these type of organizations like Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front and so on. So Pakistan's idea was that they wanted to have something which is Jammu and Kashmir pro-Pakistan movement. Okay. So in this phase, what happened in 1990 to 2002, the Pakistani nationals, the Afghan jihadis who are more pro-Pakistan, they started having a pan-Islamist agenda and they started having propagation, radicalization in India, right? With pro-Pakistan basis. Okay, so they try to use this 1990 to 2002 in a larger way. And ultimately what happened, the movement triggered. So the ideology which was there predominantly in 1990, that is pro-independence, was now slowly transforming into pro-Pakistan. Okay, so slowly, successfully, Pakistan converted the movement from pro-independent to pro-Pakistan, right? And in that way, the main role was played in this particular character was Hizbul Mujahideen. Okay, this conversion happened because of Hizbul Mujahideen. Hizbul Mujahideen was having an inspiration from Jamaat-e Islami. Okay, Jamaat-e Islami. This is the strongest and the biggest religious right-wing movement in Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, so this is one of the most important religious and biggest movements in Jammu and Kashmir. They inspired large amount of population, and they started providing ideological inspiration, religious inspiration, social inspiration to various organizations, including Hizbul Mujahideen. And the same, they supported politically the PDP. So you know uh, the PDP party, which was led by Mufti Muhammad, and later it was by his daughter, which was carried on. And they also had some alliance with BJP later. So PDP is a political phase, whereas Hizbul Mujahideen was a what do you call the terror phase of Jamaat-e-Islam. And this particular Jamaat-e-Islami, they started radicalizing people at a very high pace. And that's the reason why in 1990 to 2002, there were high amount of terrorist militancy, infiltration, and so on at large in Jammu and Kashmir. And what happened, they started having even talks, the Kashmiri groups, Indian government, Pakistan government, they started having talks. And this is how the terror become the tool of foreign policy. Okay, likewise, it started happening. So this is the peak period where they started having a large amount of, say, nothing concrete developed, or terror was there, everything was there, people were influenced, but not it's not much of helping Jammu and Kashmir to grow in a better way, to shape up its economy, to shape up its all other activities and so on. So people slowly got disillusioned, especially those people involved in 1990 to 2002 terror. They passed on their youth, they got matured, they understood the politics better way. They clearly saw that it is not going to help out in this way. So slowly what happened, they started changing their perspectives, especially there were many terror attacks like Kargil war was there in 1999. In 2001, we had parliament attack and so on. So all these uh, changed the perspective of militancy in Jammu and Kashmir. And ultimately, the people of Jammu and Kashmir got fed up, especially the local Kashmiris. Okay. So since 1996, the local Kashmiris are not happy with the way the movement was, and they were fatigued with terrorism. Okay. So ultimately, what happened in 2002, there was an assembly election. Okay. The assembly elections were conducted, and the people started participating in assembly election at large, because after a long time, assembly elections were there. Even at that time, separatists warned the local people not to participate in the elections, but the separatists were just boycotted. Kashmiris, they voted in larger electoral platforms, right? And you can find that those parties which are Kashmiri, identified as Kashmiri party, they went on for getting votes in Jammu also. Okay, so National Conference got the votes both in Kashmir and Jammu. PDP also had some votes in Kashmiri region. Congress won in a larger way. So ultimately, the politics of division was uh, declining. That is, PDP, BJP, both were not securing larger seats, whereas Congress and NC were largely getting the chance. So slowly, they started turning out positive towards Jammu and Kashmir's democracy and its rise. So it also reflected in 2004 elections. It also reflected in 2007 elections. So largely the people started having this particular process getting back in track. And that time, Pakistan was highly disturbed because of the fact that Jammu and Kashmir people started voting for Panchayat elections. They started voting for assembly elections. They started voting for Lok Sabha elections. So everything were there, and everything people became more democratic in character. Okay, Pakistan waited for an opportunity, and the opportunity came in, and that was in 2008. That was so unfortunate moment. What happened? Usually there is a yatra for Amarnath, right? So when the Amarnath yatra, you know that lakhs and lakhs of people they go. So temporary shelters will be always present. They will be constructing during the time of yatra, and then they will do away with that. Okay, and this is one aspect. Another aspect is that this is a main phenomenon. Though there was democracy in 2002 to 2008, Pakistan had crisis. Okay, they have their own problem. Musharraf was there, he was replaced. Zardari was there, and there were many other problems. And peace process was not happening properly. Okay, especially after Mumbai attack, uh, the UPA government stopped talking about peace process. They said they wanted to act on terror. So only after acting terror, they can speak. So peace process got derailed, and when it got derailed, automatically the people were more disillusioned about the new generation. The new generation of the Kashmiris, again they are facing some problems because some confusion, some turbulence is happening. What will be next, and so on. Because India and Pakistan should be peaceful, then only Kashmiri population will be peaceful. So when this is not happening, naturally the people became more cynical, right? And at that time, Amarnath issue came. What happened was, in 2008, around 100 acres, 99 acres of, it was said by the, decided by the Jammu and Kashmir government and the government of India, both the government accepted to transfer 100 acres of land to Amarnath shrine. Okay. So land should be permanently given to Amarnath temple. And it was believed that there will be some temporary shelters will be permanently converted, and some dams are going to be constructed for electricity requirement for the sheltering area as well as the temple region. So initially the problem started with the environment perspective. So there were a large amount of environmentalists. They started accusing about permanent structures in that particular region, dams and so on. But slowly it caught on, and it turned religious, where 5 lakh protesters marched against this particular land transfer. Okay, in a single rally, 5 lakh people participated. It is the biggest, largest demonstration in the history of Kashmir. And it was polarized. It was completely done in the Kashmiri side. The Jammu side was silent. After this yatra, or this particular discourse, Jammu had another yatra or rally. There were few lakhs of people they participated. So ultimately, Jammu and Kashmir was clearly divided into Jammu and Kashmir, which is Hindu versus Muslim kind of. But anyway, it also reflected in the assembly elections, the subsequent assembly elections in 2002. They had this particular issue reflected. So ultimately, what happened? Kashmiri region completely the Kashmir parties, and Jammu region, Jammu parties came into power. Okay, and that is how the PDP and BJP came into existence. So that is different. But the thing is, in 2008 it happened. So return of the terror came in. So Pakistan reaped the benefits. Okay. So ultimately, what happened? Pakistan slowly started anti-Indian campaign, which got well with the new generation what it had. The next worst thing what happened was in 2010. What happened? Three Kashmiri youths, local youth, okay, they were asked to come to military camp okay, Indian Army military camp, asked them to come. For reason is for employment. Okay, they promised that they will give employment in this particular camp. Okay, some like cooker, tailoring, and so on. Likewise, some non-combatant job. When the three Kashmiri youth came to that particular place, believing the officers, unfortunately, uh, they encountered the three militants. Three civilians. Okay, all these three were civilians, but they encountered them in the garb that they were militants. Okay, so an official, officer, and a few of the soldiers joined Javans. They joined hands together. They killed the three Kashmiri youth, and they claimed that they have successfully neutralized the militants' attack. Okay, and there was a huge outcry in 2010 in Kashmir Valley that they were civilians. And the government of India set up an inquiry committee, and the inquiry committee submitted the report, and the report clearly said in 2011 that these three were Kashmiri civilian youth, and they were reportedly misguided by the group of soldiers and officer in charge of the camp, and they have faked an encounter for just rewards and remuneration. Because when they bring down a militant, naturally they will have some rewards and remuneration. When this report was released, and when it was proved that the officials were the real culprit, the officials were dismissed from services and got arrested. But the incident triggered in 2011 the new form of attack called stone pelting. Right? Whenever they say a military vehicle moving, they started pelting stones. Who? The youth, the adolescents, youth, the young boys who are young adults in the streets. Whenever they see the military troops or these vehicles, they will pelt the stones, right? And pelting stones become one of the important methodology against Indian military. So this was brutally suppressed, okay, by the security forces, because it is a civilian movement, but they didn't consider it as a civilian movement. They considered it as a military movement, and aggressive attack was made. And you would have even remembered that a vehicle with a Kashmiri youth tied in front so as to escape the pelting of stones and so on. It happened outside Jammu and Kashmir. Everybody felt that what security forces did was right, because they were pelting stones on these guys, so they did it in a right way. But why the pelting of stones happened? Nobody were discussing that. Okay, so this resulted in the security forces using disproportionate force, and naturally the youth who were suppressed, who were attacked, who were brutally attacked, resulted in increasing militancy, because these got recruited into those people who were brutally attacked, brutally arrested, and harassed, humiliated. They started getting jobs with the terrorists. They were recruited with the terrorist groups. That's a problem, right? So automatically, what happened? The counterinsurgency program was upscaled by the army. The recruitment to the terrorist organizations increased, right? So in 2011, when government of India understood it to make a bridge to solve the problem, they started having a 3-member committee. Interlocutors were sent. The popular journalist Dilip Padonkar, Professor Ansari, and the Professor Radha Kumar. So everybody, they started negotiating or interlocuting with the Kashmiris, and they understood what is the real problem. They understood how the real problem of Kashmir can be solved, and they submitted the report to Jammu and Kashmir government, right? So that is how it happened, and slowly things started changing. So in this way, the ideology or the methodology, everything started changing. Okay, and that phase, that is 2014, 2019, those time period, in this last phase of this particular period. This was actually the third phase of militancy, which is developing, which is more pan-Islamic. Okay, the idea was more pan-Islamic, especially Jaish-e-Mohammed, um, Lakshar-e-Taiba, Huji, all these groups, they started to oppose this nationalist idea. They started to condemn and critique uh, the government in public. So slowly they started having this particular issue. And in 2014 also, the elections, you can see the split verdict. The worst form, what it was that PDP and BJP alliance in 2014, this is another trigger for the radicalization, because those people who supported PDP, especially Jamaat-e-Islami and so on, those fundamentalist group, they were very much angry upon PDP for allying with BJP, and they started having more militarization, and PDP lost completely its social base. And this particular flip-flop, because PDP wanted dialogues, but BJP wanted a covert action. Okay, so the Jamaat-e-Islami couldn't sustain that particular faith on PDP, and naturally, in 2017, what happened? There was a large-scale operation against the militants called Operation All Out, which was organized by BJP government in power in Jammu and Kashmir as well as the center. So many such pro-Pakistan and non-pro-Pakistan groups, they started budding up because of this Operation All Out, because the hue and cry of the general public, new recruits were available. So they started having new militancy. The most important new militancy, which was a consequence of Operation All Out, was Burhan Wani. Who is this Burhan Wani? Burhan Wani was a Hizbul Mujahideen group new leader, a new line leader. He was actually one of the militants who, he got into militancy because of the wrath of the Indian Army. He got stuck with Indian Army. He was actually innocent in the initial days, but the way Indian Army accused people and harassed, and he got radicalized. And he pioneered a new militancy which came to rise post 2019. He was a father of that, and a pro-Pakistani part of Hizbul Mujahideen group, Burhan Wani, started his agenda. He was the one who used social media to its core. So he is called as Facebook terrorist, right? So he was the one who strongly started in this particular way, especially after 2019 or especially 2017-19, when the profile changed. You can see between 2017-19, when the recruits of the people, recruit of the population happened, more than 45% of the total recruits were with Hizbul Mujahideen, single organization, right? Whereas remaining other 43%, they went on with the local youth, they went on with LET and Jaish-e-Mohammed and so on. So in this time, what happened was the modus operandi completely changed. It was not militancy. You remember that Government of India claimed that from 2016 onwards, the militancy started dropping, number of terror incidents started dropping. But actually speaking, the nature of militancy started changing in 2017 onwards, with the profile of change in the new youth who are recruited. Usually it was pelting stones. That was one of the things which was there. And breaking cordons, that is, security cordons will be there. When security cordons are broken down, and when these techniques are popular, or if the technique which I use to break cordon, security cordon succeeds, then I am seen as a victor among the militants as well as the locals. Okay. Say, for example, it is not winning over the security forces. Just there will be a security cordon. You will just breach a security cordon and go. Okay, that itself will be seen as a success. Apart from that, attending funerals. What is this attending funerals? Attending funerals means the idea is that when Burhan Wani was killed, encountered to death, there were lakhs and lakhs of people who attended his funeral. In the funeral, what they do, there will be the militant who will be lying on the funeral, what do you call that? Um, Possession and coffin, and every person who is inspired by that particular jihadist death, they will come to that particular funeral, kiss the forehead of the dead, touch the feet, they do their own traditional prayers and so on. And the pro-Pakistan or anti-India or pro-Jammu or Kashmir slogans will be there. And the entire lakhs of people will be energized. And at that time, there will be elements of terror people in those areas. They will speak about the ideologies and so on. There will have some new recruits. So funeral points are the point of recruitment, right? And the death is considered as a victory, right? Because they have fought against and died. So this is a new form of victory or new form of militancy, what they started inspiring on. At the end of the day, what happened? Live Burhan Wani was less dangerous, whereas Burhan Wani dead became more dangerous. Because with that death of one guy, thousands of people got recruited into the militancy in India at that time. And subsequently, what happened with all these events in 2019, Article 370 was abrogated. So ultimately, what happened when it was revoked? The homegrown, especially Jammu and Kashmir, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Al-Qaeda, and all others are facing some decline, whereas homegrown terrorists started. This is what we call it as a new militancy. What is this new militancy? There are many such groups called the Resistance Front. United Liberation Front of Kashmir. Okay, United Liberation Front of Kashmir. Then Kashmir Tigers. People's Anti-Fascist Group or force. So likewise, new organizations are emerging post 2019. Okay. They emphasize more on Kashmiri resistance. What it means, they are not talking about independence of Kashmir, pro-Pakistan or what it may be. Kashmir resist. We are resisting against India or fascist forces. They say we resist against occupational and fascist forces. Previously, they call for jihad. Now they call for resistance. Previously, they attack infidels, whereas now they are resisting against occupational or fascist forces which acts in Kashmir. So their slogan now turns out as resist to exist. Resist to exist. What is this all about? Okay. Whether this particular new form is something really new, whether their methodology is really new. Yes. What is really new is the hybrid militancy, what they have. Okay, all these, whether the what we have mentioned as the Resistance Front or United Liberation Force of Kashmir or Kashmiri Tigers or PAFF, whatever it may be, they didn't use anything called in that particular case. After 2019, they are having a new concept called hybrid militancy. That is, the terrorist will be a civilian. There will be a civilian like us. They will involve in a terror activity and then return back to the civilian life. Hope you got it. That person will be working in an industry, he will be working in some other place, he will do some business. But when you go for some issue, when some issue persists, and if he wants to resist, and if his terrorist group want to resist, he will involve in terror activity silently and get back to civilian life again. Previously, when Burhan Wani and others were there, what happened was they will just take a selfie, post it in the media that I have joined Hizbul Mujahideen. So everybody will know this person is going to be is a terrorist, and even government of India knows, and they can easily target and eliminate them. Whereas now, what they do, they don't have any photographs, they don't have anything. They operate secretly. In freedom struggle, we saw secret societies and so on for freedom. The same technique they are following, underground activities. Now you can't identify the people itself, because a civilian converting into a terrorist, again converting into a civilian, is a new form. Okay, so this is one important problem what it happens, and they get training, they get weapons, small weapons, they target very small population. Say you what you know, Kashmiri teachers, Pandit teachers targeted, just killing panchayat chiefs. What happened? Just killing 2 or 3 Kashmiri, targeting Kashmiri Pandits, it created a aloofness, and the Kashmiri Pandits, they started leaving again. Right? There were news regarding that. So their modus of operandi became targeted killings instead of mass killings. Right? And it is said that there is secularization of militancy. That is, militants becoming more secular. They are resisting to use the word jihad and so on, but it's not reality. So though these new forms of terror, they say, whether it is the resistance group or whatever it may be, they have changed the name and their attire, that's all. They are age-old LETs and so on. The same is Bull Mujahideen and so on. But they have changed the mask. They have added a mask of secularization. What is that? Resist to exist. Outsiders. They are targeting outsiders, not insiders. And even in that notice, what they did, they said that Kashmir is a group. I mean, Jammu and Kashmir is an area where they had been Kashmiris, Pandits, Buddhists, and so on. Outsiders are the one they call it as a problem. But actually, though they speak all, they have targets which are more uh, Hindus, or to be precise, non-Muslims, right? And they target only the communal aspects, not non-communal aspects are taken up. So it is not secularization, it is just masking their jihadist aspect and so, whatever it may be in this particular way. Another change is that in the new militancy, the old militancy was there in northern areas of Kashmir, bordering LOC, whereas now it is propagating to southern Kashmir. The southern Kashmir is Pulwama, Shopian, Kulgam, Anantnag, the districts of Jammu Kashmir. So it spreads between Kashmir, that is beyond the Kashmir Valley, into the southern Kashmir and Jammu region. So in the map, if you want to check it out, so previously it was in this region, okay, whereas now it is in this region. So it comes from this particular region, okay, so Pulwama and those regions. So this terror, and it also infiltrates into Jammu. Previously it was in this particular region. Clear? So that is how the population was there at that time, whereas now it is in the southern part of the region. Actually, the southern part of the region are really economically growing region, but when new forms of terror happens, actually that will be very, very tough, right? And the role of social media is very, very prominent. The role of social media, when you just take it out, social media is not only a tool, it has now become an effective weapon, okay? And a weapon of war. They try to trigger through social media. They try to use social media for creating a narrative. Okay, so what is victory? What is jigar? They try to communicate to people, and they try to create a gun culture, glamorize militancy among the local population, and to expose the weakness of the state. They try to use social media at large. So social media now turns to a weapon of war, and they clearly makes that guns cannot kill clicks. What is that? So social media impact cannot be handled by guns. This is a problem, right? And the constructs what they were making, the imaginative terrorism. See, the problem is that they are capturing the minds of people. Previously, it was the terror act which was captured or harnessed. Now the minds of the people are having imaginative heroism in the name of terrorism, right? So that's a problem. What it happens. So this is a now the jihad is playing in the virtual space. So that's the most important aspect what we have in this particular case. So, but why this problem is there? See, there is a one thing we need to understand. Um, we can clearly say that post 2019, um, the jihadists or whatever it may be, they have completely metamorphosed. They have changed. But as far as Indian security forces are concerned, they are still in the old methodology that number of militancy, number of infiltrations, so armed attacks, how much we won. So they consider this as victory, right? When we kill many number of militancy, we say we are victorious, but actually it is not considered as victorious by the people of terror. They say even getting prey to the attacks of armed security force, it is considered as a victory because he has opposed the force. He has resisted the force and died. Okay. So the mind was set in that way. And even if that terrorist dies, he is considered as a hero who died because of resistance, determination, and the heroic activity has been highly constructed. And that narrative is attracting more people. That is more and more important. The problem is that the death of that particular militant attracts more and more to join that militancy. So that problem is not understood by the security forces. Still, we just count the number of heads what we gun down, and we just have statistics that infiltration has come down, this has done down, this done down, so on and so. But actually, these are not a real victory. The real victory has to be there in this virtual space. If it is not, this narrative is going to continue, and it is very, very difficult when terror enters the mind of the people, right? So this is one of the changing phase of Jammu and Kashmir terror, especially after 2019, when the Article 370 was abrogated. And if now, this year, there is going to be elections of for the state assembly, and if still it is not going to be converted into a state, and the elections are not going to be free and fair, naturally, this space, this social media is going to be the worst ever phenomena, which is going to terrorize the minds of people, and they try to have the same 1987 moment, which is going to happen. And if it is going to happen, then India has to face a new phase of terror, right? We have quelled the 5 different militancy phases, which we have seen before in various times. 1947, 1960s, 1980s, then 1990s, then 2002 onwards. So all these terror have been handled, the 5 phases. But the sixth phase, the post 2019, definitely it is going to be a real challenge because it is a virtual war. For that, we need to be really genuine in democratizing Jammu and Kashmir, giving the statehood for Jammu and Kashmir, um, free and fair. Already there are issues in electoral rolls. They say that 25 lakh of people who are not resident are going to vote. So if the people really feel that they are not given justice, naturally more and more people will be converted into militants, which will end up in constant terrorization of the lands of Jammu and Kashmir. Right. So this is the form and nature of Jammu and Kashmir. And thank you. And the very idea of Jammu and Kashmir uh, is not a singular form of terror, and we understood that it is multifaceted and multi-pronged, and it is multi-institutional terror. Now, the Pakistan's role has completely changed. They are not directly involving it. That is the reason why infiltration is no more required. You can find that since 2016, the infiltration data may come down and we may chase them. But actually, now, no infiltration is required because the local form of terror, the homegrown terror, is very high, and Pakistan can really use them to better chances and choices of their pro-Pakistani agenda, right? And naturally, India is facing the real thousand cuts strategy from homegrown tools or instruments which are going to operate in the Western what do you call that? Uh, I mean, homegrown terror in this particular virtual space, right? So that's the idea, what it is in the present case of Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you.